The following are 3 stories about people who were caught up in another time or dimension. Lightning strike. On a warm evening on the 28th of July 1974, Peter Williamson and his family were having a barbecue. Suddenly the weather changed for the worse with the arrival of an electrical storm. Although the family was under cover, the sound of the storm along with the lightning strike terrified their dog, who then panicked and ran into the bushes in their garden. Peter then ran into the stormy weather to retrieve their dog and somehow coax it back to the house. Whilst he was out searching for the dog, he was struck by lightning, and in front of his family, Peter Williamson vanished into thin air. The police were immediately contacted. However, no trace of Peter was found. 3 days later at 8 a.m. in the morning, Peter suddenly reappeared and was found lying in some nearby bushes with 1 foot in the pond. He was also wearing a different pair of trousers than the ones he disappeared in. When questioned, all that Peter could remember of his 3 missing days was that he'd been lying in a hospital bed just a few miles away. He remembered the young doctor's name who treated him, being Dr. Nugent, and the patient who was in the bed next to him had kindly lent him a pair of trousers, as his trousers had somehow been damaged, quite possibly in the lightning strike. Other than those few memories, he could remember nothing else about the incident. A short time later, Peter started to have vivid dreams that over time became more and more lucid. In the dreams, he is standing in an unfamiliar garden and is soaking wet. He then walks out of the garden and wanders around the street, totally confused. He is eventually found wandering around lost and bewildered and escorted to a nearby hospital and given a series of tests. As he was lying in bed, the ward he was in was surrounded by strange, shimmery, glowing light. As his condition improved, the hospital staff allowed him to go outside into the hospital gardens. It was while he was walking around in the hospital garden that he suddenly found himself amongst the bushes with his foot in the pond. He had somehow been sent back to his proper timeline. The question that must be asked is whether any of the staff or patients at the hospital saw him suddenly disappear, just as his family had witnessed previously. As Peter recovered, he eventually found the hospital that he had been admitted to and managed to find Dr. Nugent. However, the Dr. Nugent he was now looking at was considerably older than the doctor that had treated him in the hospital whilst in his unusual dream state. When he approached the doctor, he asked him whether he remembered treating him as an amnesia victim, but the doctor replied stating that it was impossible as he had not treated an amnesia patient for many, many years. So what happened to Peter Williamson in 1974? Did a lightning strike zap him into a time slip, sending him back into the past where he found Dr. Nugent as a young doctor? Or was Peter sent to another dimension? Fortunately for Peter, time sent him back to the present. However, other people who experienced a similar transformation never came back, only to be trapped in another time or dimension. Thousands of people go missing around the world every year. Could they have had a similar fate? Isle of Wight, England. In June 1999, Michael and Nolene Sleep were on holiday on the Isle of Wight, an island off the south coast of England. On one particular day, the weather was warm and sunny, so they took advantage of the beautiful sunshine and decided to take a stroll down a country lane towards a park. As they were casually walking along, they came upon a large Victorian house with some children playing with a ball on the grass at the front of the property. However, they found the scene very unusual, as all the children appeared to be wearing old-fashioned clothing, where the boys wore knee breeches, which were short trousers that were fastened just below the knee. The girls were dressed in gym slips that were sleeveless belted tunics that reached from their shoulders to their knees. Although they could hear the voices of the children as they played, they could not actually make out what they were saying. Strangely though, as one of them kicked the ball, it did not seem to go anywhere. The whole scenario appeared surreal to the couple and made them feel uneasy. Nevertheless, they continued walking, but their uneasiness did not go away, as they then came upon 2 men next to an old-fashioned vehicle. As they drew closer to the men, they then greeted them, but were totally ignored as if they were invisible. The couple then carried on walking to the park and stayed there for a couple of hours, no doubt consoling each other after their unusual encounters. After leaving the park, they returned to their accommodation along the same route, and Nolene looked across at the old house and found the children still playing with the ball. But what perturbed her was that it appeared that the children had not moved at all. She then alerted her husband, who was looking in the opposite direction, and as he turned his head, the whole scene vanished in front of them. They said it was like suddenly switching off a television. Michael and Nolene Sleep were extremely disturbed by what they had just witnessed, when Nolene said she never wanted to experience anything like it ever again. Beefeaters. In the middle of the last century, a yeoman warder, who was a servant in the royal household, was on duty in the Byward Tower in the Tower of London. On one particular occasion, he suddenly looked up and was amazed to see 5 beefeaters who appeared to be dressed in outfits from a much earlier period in time. They were seated around a log fire and smoking pipes. The room in which he was standing had somehow altered in appearance. The yeoman then walked out of the room, and a short time later, when he came back into the room, he found that everything had reverted back to normal. Had he seen ghosts? Had he experienced a residual haunting? Or had he momentarily been caught in a time slip?